continuing chaos and violence in the Occupy Wall Street protest. At least 3 people are dead. Is there any point at which these protests will be totally useless? We'll debate it in a moment. And at Occupy Vermont, a 35-year-old military veteran fatally shot himself in the head inside a tent. Today, we learned of another death of a man at Occupy Utah. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Ford O'Connell, a former McCain presidential campaign advisor, and here in studio, Tara Dowdell, a Democratic strategist. Tara, how do you justify allowing these protests to continue when you see this kind of violence attaching itself at very different sites, but on a continuing basis?
Juan, well, you're right. There have been some incidents, and that's unfortunate. And my thoughts and prayers actually go out to the families of those people who were injured. Right. But the reality is that the majority of people out there, the overwhelming majority of people out there, are there to exercise their constitutional right. And we should not lose sight of the important issues that they're raising awareness about: income inequality in this country and a lack of fairness in the system. They want to return us to fairness, and they're getting that conversation going. They're getting that conversation started. And that's important. We've seen over the last decade incomes fall for the middle class.
We get the point. We understand that. But what I'm saying to you, Tara, and I want Ford to come in here, Ford, you see that, in fact, these protests are attracting people who are involved in, well, I guess I'd call it nihilism. They are literally destroying themselves. They're destroying property. They're causing businesses to close. They're attracting an element that seems to be set on destroying the community. Am I wrong?
No, that's right. I mean, Occupy Wall Street has become a destructive farce with no real end game. I mean, I don't understand how occupying public places, and tearing down public property is an economic solution. I really just don't get it, and they're not really helping their cause, because eventually people are going to turn on them when they see the bill for destruction, the death, and everything else.
But remember, Ford, and this, I think Tara is going to come back at you in a second and say, in fact, it's about, 40% of Americans still support them. And you say, oh, no, what this is going to ultimately come back and cause people to turn away from them. So the issue then becomes, what about the violence? What about the fact that this, no matter, even if you agree with what their agenda might be, and I'm not sure that it's coherent, but let's say you agree, that you still would say, but wait a second, it's attracting the wrong kind of people. People are killing themselves, reports not only of murder, but sexual attacks, crime, drugs. That's what I'm saying.
Well, exactly. If they want to be a successful movement, they have to police themselves. We can say, that people are with them with the polls right now, but they're only 2 months old. Eventually, this stuff's going to get out, and it's really going to hurt their own cause, whatever that cause may be.
I think we're painting them with a very broad brush in this conversation, and I don't think that's fair, because the majority of the people there are not engaging in this behavior. The reason why it's so shocking is because it is rare, and there are a lot of veterans involved in the protest, and that raises a critical issue. A lot of veterans come back to this country, and they have PTSD, and they fought for us, and they're coming back to no jobs, and that's part of the frustration. And they're coming back to a system that is not fair anymore. And so I think that you have some folks, you have some bad apples that are out there, certainly. No one's denying that. But the overwhelming people are there for the right reasons. And with respect to those bad apples, they're in city settings. Remember, Juan, these are city settings. So you have some folks that are coming to the protest that have nothing to do with the protest, that are causing problems. And we need to, we need to show, we need to make sure we tell the whole story.
This is the point that Ford is making, that I'm making to Utah. That if, in fact, what you've got here is a magnet for people who are looking for trouble, shouldn't we pull the magnet?
No, what we should do is to make sure that the protests are safe. Now, remember, some of the people have actually been, some of these violent incidents have been veterans who were hurt because police used a little too much force, excessive force, when they were protesting peacefully. There was a situation like that in California with a veteran.
I'm going to let Ford respond to this.
Let me say this. Not everybody's a veteran. Don't try to use Veterans Day to prop up Occupy Wall Street.
But
what I want to ask you is one simple... Hold on. Of course they're veterans. One simple question. Is this the best way to make your point about the economic inequalities in this country, by sitting in public spaces and basically causing mayhem? I mean, is there not a better way to do this? Is there not a better way to get the public on your side?
Let her answer.
Keep this up.
Let her answer.
Go ahead. Sorry
You're
about that.
filibustering there. The reality is that they're making their voices heard, and that is their constitutional right. And while we should applaud the people's right to stand up and protest, but we should condemn anything that's negative or that's detrimental.
Well, wait a second. Don't I have a right to walk down the street? Don't I have a right to feel safe in a public space? Don't I have a right to walk through Zuccotti Park?
But we're highlighting, these instances are highlighting very specific instances. There are other instances. I've been to some of the protests. There are other instances where people are out there peacefully protesting, and the reality is they're calling attention to some issues that are very important.
This debate is not going away. Tara Ford, thank you. Plenty more ahead as The Factor moves along this evening.